The Edmonton Oilers return home to host a team from the Lone Star State in what is the lone NHL game on this Tuesday, as I'm pleased to be joined by 880 Chad's Bob Stauffer. Now, the Oilers, of course, are returning from that gauntlet of a road trip. 7 games, they went 3-3-1. I'm going to ask you a bit of a two-parter here, Bob. What's one positive that they can extract from that road trip, and what's one thing that they need to improve in order to get more consistent results?
Well, Tony, a couple things. I mean, as a general positive, the biggest positive is that they're through their 2 biggest Eastern road trips of the year. And I know some people think it's an excuse. Other people say, no, it's a legitimate thing. I think for a short-term positive over the last couple games has been the level of compete from the team. I liked how hard they played in front of Calvin Pickard against Tampa Bay on the second of what was a very difficult back-to-back. Unfortunately, they weren't able to expose, Tampa Bay having 3 defensemen out of the lineup that night, but they played hard. They were competitive in that game, and they stuck up for each other, and then they extended that carrying forward against Florida. They played hard, they stuck up for one another, and they got a victory against the Florida Panthers. So that's the positive. They've still, from a negative perspective, they've still got some work, Tony, to do, frankly, on their defense, their team defense overall. They're giving up too many chances. They need a few more stops. They're 31st in the league in save percentage. But part of that is the caliber of opportunities that they've given up. So that's going to be an ongoing work and progress.
And a big conversation point here this morning between the players and head coach Chris Knobloch is the 5-on-5 play.
Yeah.
Now, the Oilers have allowed an NHL high of 61 goals at 5-on-5. Yeah. How do you clean that up, Bob? What is the solution for this club?
I think they seemed, and Chris talked extensively yesterday, you were there, about the fact that they're pretty much running the same systems, but there seemed to be a little bit of a disconnect in terms of how they were transitioning the puck, and it was, lending itself to some turnovers. I do think it's got to be stated, Ekholm and Bouchard, Matthias Ekholm and Evan Bouchard, we didn't know, at least I didn't know that did you know that Evan Bouchard was playing with the severity of injuries that he was in the final last year? I did not know that.
No, I did not.
Okay, we knew Nuge was hurt. We knew that Nuge had a hand injury. We did not know that, and so we knew Matthias was coming off a groin injury, and we also, but we did not know that Evan was as banged up as he was. And I think that those injuries may have played a factor in for that pairing to start the year. They really rounded into form the last couple of games. That's a super big positive for Edmonton. So I think that when your top pairing starts playing like your top pairing, that can help your overall 5v5 play. And then I think that they're a little bit more connected and they're playing a little bit more tighter defensively, which is limiting the amount of holes and seams that are there for opposition.
And how about that top pairing going +10 against the Florida Panthers?
That was good.
What a great performance from number 2 and number 14, of course, combining for 6 points on the night, but they're looking for 2 points in the standings against the Stars club, Bob, that has earned points in 8 straight road games, 7-1-3 on the road this season. But good news for the Oilers, they're 5-1-2. What is the biggest challenge against the Stars club? Because it is a team that we saw just 20 days ago.
Well, I did. It's interesting. I had a brief conversation with Glenn Gultz, and they're down some defensemen. They're down Thomas Harley, who is an all-day top 2 defenseman in the NHL, and we both expect to see him on Team Canada in the upcoming Olympics. Yeah. They have Heiskanen, they have Lindell, so they've got 2 of their top 3. Alex Petrovic the other night played 24 minutes.
Wow.
24 minutes. This was a guy that spent the majority of the last 6 years in the American Hockey League. They got a couple other basically AHL call-ups on defense because Labushkin's out of the lineup. So, this is going to be, I think Edmonton, if they can sustain some kind of forecheck and get to the second and third pairings against Dallas, it'll give them a chance to win the game. For whatever reason, Stu Skinner plays his best hockey against Jake Ottinger as well. Yeah. Back-to-back playoff series. I know I talked to Dallas Stars general manager Jim Nill when we were in Dallas, and he's like, Bob, I remind everybody out there that Stuart Skinner was the biggest difference 2 years ago in the series. Not last year. He said last year Edmonton was better, but the year before that, he said Skinner was really good. So Dallas is obviously a well-coached team. They're a veteran team. They've got depth scoring, but they don't have Mikko Rantanen tonight. And they don't have Thomas Harley. Yeah. And the Oilers got to find a way to capitalize on that.
And, of course, Stuart Skinner coming off a 35-save performance in the Sunshine State for his 8th win of the season. One last thing about the Dallas Stars. It seemingly looks like as the game goes on, they get better and better. 30 goals out of 70 this season have come in the final frame. What can you say about their ability to come at you in waves throughout the entirety of 60 minutes?
Well, I didn't know that stat, so good for you for digging that one up.
I appreciate it.
I can tell you the caps on the players that they signed, but I didn't know that stat. Yeah, I would say that's a sign of their depth.
Yeah.
That they can push and come at you and just, they've got depth at forward. Right now, they don't have a lot of depth at defense. And again, I think Edmonton they got to take advantage of that in tonight's game. But I do think that, Dallas they've hit on some picks, right? Like, you look at Wyatt Johnson and that draft back in 2021, that was a pretty good draft pick for the Dallas Stars that they got. The orders passed on Wyatt Johnson that year and took Xavier Bourgault. And Wyatt Johnson's a second-line center, so they have strength down the middle. And again, the only difference tonight is they don't have Rantanen, who's probably their best player. And then they don't have Harley, who's probably their second best defenseman. So on a normal night, they're about as deep as anybody in the league. Tonight's a different night. Edmonton's got to take advantage.
All right, puck drop tonight at 7:10 p.m. at Rogers Place. As the Oilers are in search of victory number 11, you can hear Bob Stauffer alongside Cam Moon on 880 CHED on tonight's call.